And the access inequality, I guess it's kind of slightly strained from why I'm here today. I'll try and address it as best I can, really. First, I think the disabled access issue. Firstly, I think we have around it's 99% of the bus fleet now in the city region. In fact, it's over 99% is wheelchair accessible. Again, it's been prompted, if you like, by legislation which next year forces out 100% of all fleets to be accessible. But we do have now a good situation in terms of accessibility for in particular for wheelchair users. We and our capital programme around bus stops and shelters and stations, there's a big element of that which is focused on making sure that we're building up curbs so that people have level access to buses. On the bus, that becomes more of a challenge. I know there's been various kind of cases going through the courts over the last kind of 2 or 3 years around who gets priority, someone in a wheelchair or someone with a buggy. I think it's very much accepted now that that in those cases someone in a wheelchair should get priority, but those things create conflict situations. It's something the driver has to, as diplomatically as they can, kind of resolve that, and in solving a problem you create another problem in that sort of situation. So it's a challenge to deal with that, but I think it's becoming much clearer now to people and better understood that people in wheelchairs get priority in those sort of situations. The other examples, it's quite hard for me to comment on the kind of specific examples, and I wouldn't like to comment without knowing more detail really on those particular situations. But I kind of take your point that people should have expectations around, if you like, the rules of the game, and that should be clear and consistently applied. And those are some of the things that crop up in the conversations that we have with bus operators about being consistent. But we have 140 million passenger journeys in the city region alone, and we know that some of those aren't, the experience of some of those people aren't as good as it could be, and that's something that we're very focused on changing for as many people as possible.
Okay, Councillor Stewart and then Councillor Leech.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, you did mention around the analysis. Who will get enough feedback when it comes back to the panel? And where's the date, or is it going to, who's going to get the feedback? And secondly, just a comment really, bus shelters are an issue that we don't have. Thank you.
Okay, answer your first question first. I think one of the recommendations of the report is to come back to you in 12 months with an update. And obviously our Merseytravel committee have asked for an update in due course on progress. So what I propose to do is that around 12 months from now, I report back to Merseytravel committee and then to yourselves in a similar way as I have done with the recommendations. That's kind of for you to decide. Really. In terms of bus shelters, I think we have about 2,500 bus shelters in the region, around 6,000 stops. We're at the moment just taking through a new policy and strategy around the deployment of infrastructure, making sure that we're much more consistent around where shelters are installed in relation to passenger numbers, and being much more kind of aligned. But in deploying bus shelters, there are a whole host of issues around bus shelters, where they're positioned, if they're outside people's homes, all of the things that kind of the impact on if you like the very local community around that bus stop. So and we've also got to be mindful of the money we have available as well to invest in resources. So that new policy is around trying to create the right balance, if you like, between providing the right facilities for the right number of people in as fair and consistent sure. So you raised the question about accessibility, particularly for people with prams and pushchairs, and what kind of review were put in place. Well, I think you highlight one of the challenges. A bus is only so big with only so much space on, and that's configured in a way that's tries to be as accommodating as it possibly can be. But ultimately, once you've got maybe 2 or 3 pushchairs on a bus, there isn't any room for any more, and I think there's probably more space than before given over to people with luggage and people with things like prams and pushchairs and people in wheelchairs. The balance kind of is what it is, though, in terms of that. I think you made a wide point though about a review. Again, one of the actions in relation to our bus strategy is a series of network reviews, which some of which we've completed, and others of which are either in progress or will be happening in the future. What that will mean is that we will be reviewing the bus provision in conjunction with bus operators right across the city region to make sure that we've got the right provision to take us forward.
And in answer to your question, basically, I've just read through it quickly, but basically what it does is it actually bans the local authority from having publicly owned bus companies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what goes through to us.
Right, okay. Councillor Murphy?
Chair, I'm just after a bit of clarification really on the item where it says about the short distance trials to be shared. It seems a bit contradictory to me that you're saying you'll do a bilateral discussion with the Weaver, but that you can't share information due to the competition. Just wondered if you could clarify that and explain how you're planning to progress that issue, please.
Yeah, sure. So Arriva are the only example, I think, in the region that we can find of where there is a short hop fare available. So what we propose is to approach Arriva on that basis and ask if we can do some analysis around that. Now, they might turn around, I would hope they wouldn't, they might turn around and say, on your bike, no, we're not interested in doing that. And if that's the case, we'll have to look again at how we address that recommendation. But I would hope that they would take a collaborative approach to that. Clearly, in doing that, it will involve looking at commercial information. We have a data sharing agreement in place with Arriva, which sets out how and in what way we can use commercial data that they choose to share with us. We will be bound by both that and also competition legislation, which means that we can't talk in closed rooms with more than one bus operator about fares. It's illegal to do that. It's competition law, and we have to take very detailed legal advice whenever we talk about fares with bus operators to make sure that we're staying in a legal situation. So what I wanted to do was really just point out that that's the situation that we're in, and we can't do a review and then just publish that in maybe an unredacted form and share that with every bus operator and say this is the example that we want to follow. That's not what we can do. I would hope that we can share some output operators, as I said when I was talking earlier. I strongly believe Merseytravel's view and the Alliance's view is that it will gain strength by as many operators, as much of the city region bus offer being operators signing up to the Alliance. I don't see any issues with any bus operator joining the Alliance. That's not what you described isn't my view of the world and isn't a view that's been played back to me within the Alliance itself. That said, if you want to do partnership, then that works both ways. So we want to do partnership. We want to have a partnership approach with every bus operator. That bus operator has got to want to do that, and it's a conscious decision by those bus operators. I get the sense, and I don't want to kind of speak on behalf of any smaller bus operator, but different operators are in kind of different places with that. To be quite honest with you, I can very much envisage a situation where a number of smaller operators join the Alliance at some point over the next year, and I would hope that happens. In terms of accessibility, again, what you describe, we need to look at the detail of what the issues are, what complaints we're receiving, and what the themes are around that. I don't particularly recognise that as a theme, if I'm quite honest. But one of our actions within the Alliance is to look at complaints, what the issues are around that, and address those. We know that, as an example, I think driver attitude is the most complained about issue when it comes to ourselves and bus companies. And one of the actions we're taking with the Alliance around providing additional customer service training for drivers, you feel like that's one of the first actions that we're taking to address what customers are saying is wrong about the customer offer. It's only one action and it's only one thing, but I think it's a start, and very much we want to see what customers are saying is wrong and putting actions to address that. And if what's been described is one of those issues, then clearly that's important to address. In terms of the bus services bill and what our asks are, what our wish list is around that, well, I think very much the way that the bill has been progressed and is outlined is in line with what our aspirations are. We want a toolkit of options that are usable to improve the bus offer. We believe that franchising as an option is a useful option for us to have, and we're going to look at that. We believe that being able to do more in partnership again is a really useful tool, and we also believe that operators being much more open about the data that they hold, particularly on performance, is positive. I think it's been outlined some of the issues that we have with the bill. So, for example, the municipal bus companies issue, that's something that we'd be very clear about through those channels that we have through the select committee that we feel is wrong. But the big picture, if you like, of the bill is that once those powers are available to us, we'll be in a much better position as Merseytravel and as a combined authority to improve the bus offer. And the things that have been outlined in the bill we're very supportive of. The key is making sure that as the bill goes through Parliament and goes through those processes, when it comes out at the end of that process, all of the things that have been outlined in it remain very useful for us as an authority, and not something that's akin to quality contracts, which has been shown with Nexus and others that have tried to pursue that, has been shown to be unworkable or very, very difficult to achieve in that.
Councillor Stewart, and then we'll wind that one up.
Chair, just going back, my proposal was in regards to
answer to your question, we're not only working with Reba, so can you clarify the question a little bit more, because we're not just working with Reba.
You don't mention stagecoach, you know, with short distance fare, it's again analysis.
If we just step in there, I think that what was said earlier is that Aviva are already running a short-term scheme within Southport, and no one else is actually doing it, so they're using Aviva to gain information. I think that's really good.
The question is that Aviva don't cover some kind of things.
That's true, but in those areas there isn't a short hop fare that exists to do the analysis on. So what that action relates, that recommendation relates to analysis of short hop fares. That's the only example in the city region.
It seems, I have to agree with you, Councillor Stewart, it seems to me daft that although Aviva are the only ones doing it, the big bus companies, the bigger bus companies only act on what they take passengers through the main conduits and not into the more village-type areas of towns. They just concentrate on the main conduits back into, certainly in Malton, they operate on the main conduits within the borough and not splitting out into the community as we would like with the small bus companies. If you could work with one of them to develop something, then maybe Aviva and Stagecoach might take on that option.
What you find with, and this is kind of excluding Halton really, which obviously has Halton Borough Transport operating there. Where you see the smaller bus companies in many cases, those are operating routes that are subsidised by Merseytravel. So in those cases, Merseytravel specifying what that route is, and we're paying for it to be operated. So it isn't smaller operators, and there are obvious kind of counter examples to that. But in the main, it isn't smaller operators commercially doing stuff in rural areas. I mentioned the network review process earlier. One of the objectives within that is to make commercial more of that supported network, and we've in the process so far we've had some really good examples of that where operators have taken over commercially what was a previously subsidised service, which is obviously great for the combined authority, because that means that we can either put that money kind of back in the levy, or we can spend it on something else to improve the bus offer. So that's kind of the bigger picture around that.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that the bus contracts were actually commercial. That's what I'm just saying that it seems to be the small bus companies who go those type of contracts from Merseytravel rather than the large bus companies who mainly operate on the main continent. Okay, so we'll move on to recommendation. The recommendation is that the response be noted and Merseytravel be thanked for the response and further report on progress on the actions for the response be brought to the panel in 12 months' time. Can we agree that, please? Yes. Those in favour? Agree. Okay. Any against? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Matt, for your time. I hope it wasn't too stressful for you. Thank you very much. Right, we move on to the ethical standards. I'll move something into that.
Thanks, Chair. The members who've been on the panel will be aware that a piece of work was referred to the panel by the Combined Authority around the development of an ethical framework. Members will be, I think, aware of these issues from their roles and responsibilities on their constituent authorities. Obviously, the Combined Authority needs to have that same sort of framework as an entity itself. And we took a piece of work, because it isn't a one-size-fits-all thing off the shelf that you can pick up, but there are obviously principles, and I think you'll be aware of the Nolan principles, which outline the types of things that public bodies should have in place. What we did was, because obviously we've got the 6 constituent authorities who have been around for some time and have developed their own responses to that, those principles and that ethical framework. And to look at how they've addressed that, and you'll see in one of the appendices, each measure has been, if you like, tested against the types of ingredients, the parts of the jigsaw that would make up a complete ethical framework if one existed. What we're suggesting, Chair, is that piece of work we suggest that you recommend to the combined authority that they use that piece of work to test their developing ethical framework, because it is a relatively new organisation. Of course, the constituent authorities have developed these over a period of time. There is a piece of work within the combined authorities on audit plan to look at this, and so obviously the combination of the piece of work that's been done here and that audit plan will look at the ethical framework of the combined authority. And the suggestion is to, you asked the combined authority to use the results of this work to test its own developing response to the ethical framework, and we should report back here to you when that's been complete.
Any questions to me? No. In that case, can we move the recommendations that A, note the results of the initial inquiry's report, request that the combined authority uses that research in developing its own ethical framework, recognising the work it is. I'm having trouble with these last. Where it is in its own development as an organisation, and a further information of how it's not to time on the progress in developing that framework. Can we agree that, please? Yes. Agreed. Any competition?
Can I just ask a question really why it takes 12 months to get feedback? It seems an awful long time. With both of these papers that we've just seen, 12 months does seem a long time because we don't have something in 6 months.
I'm quite happy to have something in 6 months. Matt, are you happy to supply something in 6 months? In a trip? Even if it's not.
If it's not feasible, I accept that, but you know, there's no point in holding back on information that can be reported.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not disagreeing. In 6 months? Okay, 6 months again for the third?
Thank you.
Thank you. Scrutiny panel work programme and recent combined authority decisions.
Yes, Chair. Again, members who've been on the panel for some time will remember the panel has established a work programme. You've worked through that, obviously not completed the current piece of work that you just started, but of course that work programme was developed under the auspices of the original powers, duties and responsibilities of the combined authority when it was formed in 2014. That is obviously changing and developing as a result of the devolution deal. We've got a meeting next week. I think members are aware of to look at the piece of work that you commenced on employment learning skills, which you've asked to look specifically at apprenticeships and the development of apprenticeships across the city region. The question obviously is, once that's complete, is where you want to see the focus of your attention or work programme beyond that. Obviously any feedback members want to give here and now, and any initial ideas will be taken into consideration. The suggestion is that you perhaps use one of those sessions on your next piece of work at the end of one of those to have a more detailed discussion about where do you want to go from here really in terms of your work programme. And then the suggestion is we bring a report back in January. We could do it in 12 months, but we bring a report back in to you in January, which brings all that work together for you, so you can endorse however you want to focus your energies over the next 12 months, 2 years, Chair, and that's the suggestion.
Any ideas? Any questions?
the issues that have been raised here, we'll bring those together and we'll put them on a list, because other members may wish to have a little bit more time to think about that, and then by the time we come to the sort of workshop-y event, we can put them all on the list. And obviously there's issues about capacity and the like, and the things that you can really affect as well. I think we need to do some assessment of that, but I think it gives people the opportunity who perhaps haven't had time to think about it to also put in their comments as well, so everybody gets the opportunity, and then discuss that, and then bring a report in January with a worked up programme that will be for the panel to decide on.
Everybody happy with that? Anybody not happy with that? Anybody want to add anything to that? Okay, thank you. The recommendations to the original programme be endorsed. Panel members provided missing indications of potential future review activity requirements, and that the discussion take place with panel members after one of the sessions being organised for the employment skills review. Have you bringing a revised programme to the general meeting? We agree with that. Thank you very much. Updates on the devolution and governance arrangements here.
Yes, Chair. Again, members of the panel will be well aware from the constituent authorities that each of the constituent authorities agreed to the devolution deal in November of last year. In order for that to be put in place and to happen, there are a number of parliamentary orders required to turn the agreement into legislation, and the appropriate legislation to enable powers to move around, I suppose, we want it as a better description. The parliamentary orders which are required to do that, there's about, I think there's 4. The first one is obviously to create the role of the directly elected mayor, and that has been done. That was approved through the parliamentary processes in July. It's a very, very short order, which more or less says what I've just said, that the role of elected mayor be formed for this combined authority area. The other parliamentary orders which are required is, there is one which will have to stipulate the electoral arrangements to elect that directly elected mayor, and that's not yet been produced. There needs to be a parliamentary order around the powers and duties which the combined authority will need, and the mayor will need, to put the devolution deal into place. And there will be a parliamentary order around the scrutiny arrangements, which I know obviously this panel will be extremely interested in. And that will deal with issues such as the chairing arrangements, ensuring political balance, quorums, calling arrangements, voting arrangements. So there's quite a lot of information that would have been useful today to have shared with you, but those orders haven't been published yet by government. The original timetable was round about this mid-October, but that's been delayed till the early part of November, which is a little unfortunate because it's kind of impossible to start putting your future governance and constitutional arrangements in place without actually knowing what's going to be in those orders. So in a sense, this meeting was going to be right at the perfect time, when we thought they were going to be published around about the middle of October, and it's turned out to be not at the perfect time. That causes a slight timetabling issue, because your next meeting is until January, of course, next formal meeting. And I think what I would suggest is, because those orders are clearly important for lots of reasons, perhaps more particularly the scrutiny one, which is obviously clearly important to the future operations of this panel, that we organise some form of seminar for members of the scrutiny panel when those orders are published, because I don't think we should wait till January. But it's just unfortunate that this would have been at the perfect time, and it turned out to be the wrong time. So, Chair, that would be a suggestion I would make to the panel, that we don't wait till the next meeting, that we have some seminar. We may be able to tag it onto one of the other meetings, so bearing in mind your time commitments. But then look at them in the detail that we've got, and then the implications that they may or may not have for the scrutiny panel.
Are there any questions on the paperwork in front of you before we move to the recommendation? Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Chair. Just a few inconsistencies, sorry, with regards to page 29.